I'm going to turn it over to the lovely Adriana Trigiani, who will be moderating our first panel of debut authors, and I'm going to give her the honor of introducing them. Thanks, everyone. And Adriana, you are muted, so you'll have to do that again.
Have a mute button in life, because it's always the first thing you say that you go, I wish I could rework that. So let me just say, welcome to this spectacular event. We have 3 debut authors that I've read them all. I love them. And I feel for the first time about the world better. You librarians are, we love you, and you're the lifeblood of readership and recommending books and supporting all books. And I'm the daughter of a librarian, so that's why they picked me to kick this off. So here we go. I hope I don't shame my mother in heaven, but here we go. We've got Pip Williams. Pip wrote The Dictionary of Lost Words, which, well, what all of these novels share is a particularity of mood, world, character, and story, each unto themselves delicious. In this one, what is so great for listen, librarians, you're going to go cuckoo for this because it's about words. And it's about, and I'm gonna have you talk about that in just a second, Pip. And then let me introduce everybody first, so everybody's kind of involved here. And then we have Sanjena Sathian, who wrote Gold Diggers, which is an epic. It spans time periods and continents, and it's an immigrant story of such ferocity. You will love it. We'll talk about it in just a second. And then we have, Stacey Swann. I know you spent a lot of time in small towns, because this is one of those big, delicious, luscious family epics. There's some cheating that goes on, and then the family has to work everything out, and secrets come out. And it also, as you can see from Olympus, has a mythic element. Every one of these novels has something in it that is so a spice, that is so delicious and original in terms of narrative. And you have it in Olympus, Texas. All right, now I'm going to stop talking. Let's start with, you're right there in front of me. Let's start with Sanjena. Tell us about what inspired you to write this book, The Gold Diggers.
Thanks for the really warm introduction. I'm super excited to be here. A chunk of Gold Diggers actually takes place in a library based on the Sandy Springs Public Library. So if anyone is from Georgia, you will see it make a cameo. As Adriana said, Gold Diggers is a family story, an immigrant story. It follows a mother and a daughter who are gold thieves in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, where I grew up, and their neighbor who kind of gets involved in their gold theft. And I started writing it in part because I remembered gold theft happening around the suburbs in Atlanta, but also in New Jersey, in California, kind of anywhere there were these clusters of Indian immigrants. There's gold being kept in their houses, probably more than there should be, and people like to steal. And so I had been thinking about that. My mom always said there are definitely Indians involved in those thefts, otherwise how would they know where to go find the gold? So I turned that over and kind of started to imagine my way into what it would be like to be those thieves.
And I have to say, there's so many elements that made me laugh out loud. I mean, hilarious dialogue, hilarious situations. Every family can relate. But what's so wonderful is we meet the family you created. Home run. All right, Stacey. The Briscoe family. Please, Stacey, let me tell you, you got it. You got Texas, the South, it's a mirror ball, this one. Of a family of crazies. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind. Yeah, I grew up in Texas. I've lived most of my life here in Texas, and I grew up about an hour outside of Houston in a very small town. So yeah, definitely know the small town life. And as you mentioned, the novel's about the Briscoe family. So there's there's parents and their grown children who are all kind of around 30. And March Briscoe comes back to town after a 2-year exile because he had slept with his brother's wife. So he's back in town. And the idea for the story really came because I was thinking about Texas mythology. Like, Texans really buy into their own mythology about how everything's bigger in Texas and everything's larger than life. And I just suddenly felt like, oh, how fun to mix Greek mythology with Texas mythology, because they both have these larger than life characters, and it was characteristics of the gods into just mortal, regular humans.
Well, I'll tell you something, Stacey. The Texas Library Association, the TLA, who we've had the privilege of going and visiting all the libraries down there, they're good. Get ready. Just get ready. You're going to have a tsunami of love from the TLA down there, but nationwide as well. I mean, I think you all as authors share that. All right, that was a good. Now, hang on. Pip Williams from Australia. Hello, Pip.
Hi, Adriana. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Pip, I'm just going to tell you. Esme is, you had me laughing and crying. You had me completely relating to her. The librarians are going to relate to Esme. You've written a protagonist that she feels like us. Will you talk about this? Because I love the idea of what this book was about, and I loved the execution of your narrative. So tell us about her, because I think she's the key.
She is. Yeah, she is. So basically, I was really interested in the development of the Oxford English Dictionary. But when I read about it, I particularly read The Surgeon of Crowthorne, which I think you call The Professor and the Madman over there, by Simon Winchester. A fascinating non-fiction book. But by the time I got to the end of it, I realised that the Oxford English Dictionary was a very male endeavour. So all of the editors were males, all of the lexicographers were males, most of the volunteers were males, but importantly, the literature that they used to define the English language was based on literature written mostly by men. And I was curious about what that meant for women's words, what that meant for our language. Does it mean that our language is biased towards male experience and understanding? And the way I approached this novel was to throw a little girl into the scriptorium where all the words are being defined. And Esme is the daughter of one of the lexicographers, but she spends her days beneath the sorting table where the men are defining the language. And she grows up with the Oxford English Dictionary. And it's really a story about how the words affect her, but also how she affects the words over time.
Yeah, and what's so moving is that she made a decision to develop her own dictionary, which is where the title comes from.
That's right. So she's interested in women's words, and she realises that some words have been left out of the Oxford English Dictionary. And this was actually a little bit of historical fact, that one word was lost from the dictionary, and that word is bondmaid, which means slave girl. Yeah. And no one knows how it was lost. And the editor of the Oxford English Dictionary, James Murray, assures everyone it's the only word that was ever lost. But because no one knows how it was lost, that was a little bit of gold for a novelist, because I could make it up. And Esme plays a fairly big part in that.
Okay, so now the librarians have a sense of these stories are, and I was so blown away, because it makes me so thrilled that as debut novelists, your ideas, your thoughts, your characters, your worlds are going to be out in the world very soon, and we're talking April at the soonest, and Olympus is in May, and then our Gold Diggers is April 6th, And do you know your pub date, Pip?
I think it's around April 14th, something like that, yeah.
Okay. So let me ask Sanjena this question. Sanjena, what was the first library that you remember as a kid, as a child? What's the first library experience you remember? And what was the name of that library?
Yeah, that would have been the Sandy Springs Public Library, which gets fictionalized as the Hammond Creek Public Library in Gold Diggers. My parents both worked, and they thought that summer camps were for white people. They didn't want to send us to summer camps. They were like, we'll just drop you at the library. So when my grandparents were in town from India coming to kind of babysit us, they would just trundle us over to the Sandy Springs Library, leave me in the kids section, leave my grandparents often in the history section. My grandfather used to really love reading American history, and so he would be reading on one side of the library, and I would be reading over on the other side and trying to make it through the Gold Star bulletin board to read as many books as possible over the summer.
What was your favorite book as a child from the library?
Oh man, I remember loving The Giver. I think I read and reread The Giver a million times.
Wow, that's interesting. So you were an early reader. You read as soon as you could.
Yeah, I did. Wow. I did, yeah. My grandmother is actually a literary translator in India, and so my parents were in the sciences, are in the sciences, because when you grow up in a lot of post-colonial countries, if you're smart, you're supposed to go into the sciences. But luckily, I had this sort of arts one generation removed.
And how many kids in your family did you grow up with? How many kids are in your family?
It's me and my older brother.
Yeah. And what does your older brother do?
He works in finance, so that's a career I think my parents understood a little bit better than me doing this weird writing thing.
Well, you know, I hate to tell you, but as long as you had the brother in finance, they were fine with you being a writer.
They've come around. It helps.
Call your brother.
It helps when they see the cover of the book. I think now it's a real
Oh,
deal.
I'm sure. Did they go crazy?
Yes, I love that cover. We ended up getting to work with some artists in Bombay from the neighborhood that I lived in when I lived in India for a couple of years.
It's so evocative. I said I want a room in this cover. It's so, the blue is just, you know, well, let's face it, everything started in India, so you get credit for that right there. Let's go to Stacey. Stace, okay, tell me your first public library card. Where'd you get it?
The town I grew up in, Sealy, Texas. So Sealy had about 3,000 people at that time. So when I was really small, it was the tiny public library, which was right next to the post office downtown. But we had this amazing thing happen. A local doctor, when I was in elementary school, donated a lot of money to endow the Gordon Memorial Library, and it was huge and beautiful and had so many books in it. And one of my favorite memories as a kid is the first time I went into the new library and was just amazed. And my mom's a huge reader, so she took us to the library from the time we were little kids. And I also remember those boards during the summer where you get the stars and over how many books you read. So yeah.
I think got those stars. Of course, she wrote about gold, so she wanted those gold stars. That was her inspiration. She probably thought those little dinky paper things were real. Right, this, Sanjena. So Stacey, you had tiny libraries and big, massive libraries. Did you feel the library belonged to you?
A wonderful question. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Did you also have that feeling?
I'll share that.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to be writers, or maybe we didn't know we were going to be writers, but we knew that place had something going on that we wanted in on.
And I loved, librarians were my favorite people too, because
why?
They always treated me as a kid like they look at you as an individual and what you're reading, and they didn't care that I exhausted the kids section and wanted to move into the adult section, and they were all for that. They were, putting books into my hands and letting me go wherever I want in the library, and it just had a real feeling of freedom and respect in the library.
So were you a YA reader when the big place opened?
I'm old enough that I almost predate YA. When I was a kid, YA was not as huge, I feel like. So I went straight from like my childhood loves into adult. I would read what my parents checked out. So I was reading Stephen King by the time I was 11, which
oh my God!
But
nothing like Carrie to want you to get a date to the prom. So you really you met the reading on your own terms. You picked what you wanted to read. You were not. Nobody said you can't read that. So okay, so you were reading Stephen King. Wow. Let me ask you what's your favorite book of that time in your life? Which one did you read more than once?
You know, when I was a kid, my favorite was the Black Stallion series.
Chincoteague. Did you read all those?
Which one?
Asenath of Chincoteague. I can hardly pronounce it.
I did
That's
not.
got a horse. The horse
no.
on that island that run free.
That's right. Yes, I do remember that one.
Because if you read Black Beauty, they punted you through the horse books, right?
All of the horse books, yeah, absolutely. And I also was a huge fan of the Narnia books, the C.S. Lewis books.
Oh, yeah.
Love those, too.
Well, I will say that about you ladies, is that you use elements that surprised and delighted me that were magical, which it's going to bring me to Pip. I wish we were all together and you were having lunch at my house, but we'll make that happen. Okay. Pip.
Yes.
When did you get your first library card?
So we had a public library right next to my school. So I was at the library every afternoon after school. And I loved the library, and I loved it because kids were welcome. So it was one of those spaces, and I think it still is, where children can go in and feel welcome. And Stacey said that, you know, librarians just welcome you in, and they don't sort of monitor you quite so much as you might be in other adult spaces. Mm-hmm. And it was a safe place. Your parents could leave you there and you felt safe there. But I didn't have the reading level perhaps of Stacey. I was reading Trixie Belden books most of the time.
Trixie Belden, great.
She was my hero. I couldn't get enough of her. And I also like the Narnia series as well. But I actually what I remember when you brought this question up, what I remember is going in there and reading the encyclopedias, which, you know, you don't do anymore. You scroll online, but I do remember the physical act of, you know, getting down one of the letters of the alphabet and just flicking through it just to see what information you could find. You know, they were just little, every now and then you'd come across a nugget of something interesting.
An author that did not have a wonderful experience with their librarian. And I always thought I had wonderful experiences with all my librarians. You know, there's nothing like going back and thanking them. Mrs. Roller, Billie Jean Scott, I mean, we could go through them. James Varner, who drove our bookmobile, you know. You just think of these people almost as, to me, they're just part of the fabric of becoming a writer, because they put books in your hands that you might not have chosen. They could sort of look at you and tell what you would like. Because there's no such thing as a reader. If a librarian gets her mitts on you, she's going to find what makes you tick and help you find the book. So when kids say they don't like to read, I say, no, you got to talk to your librarian. She'll guide you. Librarians, within the sound of our voice here today, you're our heroes, and you make all these books possible. You really do. Now, I'm going to go around the group again. I really feel that I'm being as deft as I can possibly be in this situation, because I'd like to see all your heads at once. But, you know, blind is a bat, so I'm like, I can pretty much see. Okay, so let's get down to it here. So each of these books, and I don't like to use the word magical, but or enchantment or myth or a potion, you know, or something stolen, but it has properties. I'm going to ask each of you, where did that come from, and why did you engage it? Because it's going to make your books big fat hits, all three of you. So let's start with, why don't we start with Stacey on this one? Olympus.
Yeah, you know, I've loved mythology since I was a kid. One year, I think I was in 5th grade, I did like a class project on the labors of Hercules, and I drew out all the constellations on maps. So I've always really loved those myths. And I also, as a writer, like I like to make like almost puzzles. I like building off of its existing things. So getting to take these myths that already exist and then think like, okay, how can I make this sound plausible in modern day Texas? It was just such fun to think of it in those terms, and really gave me a place to start, because it's my first novel. So I think for a lot of us, when you start your first novel, you're like, oh my, how do I do this? Not quite sure how. So having some foundation to build from was really helpful.
Not stop. You keep going now. Are you working on the next one?
I have an idea, and I've been doing some reading, but I haven't started drafting yet, but hopefully that will start really soon.
Now, let's go back to Sanjena. Look at this one. Where did you get your, I'm trying to pinpoint the exact moment in your book where I thought, here we go. I feel like Gold Diggers is a circus. It gives me the feeling of being a part of something wild and interesting and new, and yet those family dynamics are deeply familiar. So the dramatizing, why did you go, where did it come from in you?
Yeah, I think I had always wanted to write something that contributed to or belonged to American literature. You know, I didn't feel immediately at home in this country, even though I was born here. And I think the way I got to know America was through reading books about America. And so I wanted a way into that, but I needed it to be playful. And so that's where the sort of like magical and fantastical elements come from. Without spoiling too much, the gold that is stolen ends up having some magical components. And just adding that in, I had spent maybe 5 or 10 years trying to write about the immigrant experience in a way that kept feeling very somber and kind of like eating into spinach. And then as soon as I kind of discovered that I was allowed to play with magic and still have it be literature, I got access to the sort of familiar through the strange, and I love working in that territory.
Circus!
That border, yeah.
Did you think about the circus? Did you?
I didn't, but I thought of it when I started to see these covers, these awesome covers, which are based on Indian matchbox art, but it has kind of circusy feel, totally.
Even the way that you write your dialogue, there is a sense of that you're a dramatist. It's very full and rich, and well, the three of you really share that. The dialogue is killer in all of them. I think you're adept at what you're doing, but also I was thinking about you and the whole Indian tradition in America in terms of what stories we have published. And, you know, I'm a big fan of Dr. Abraham Verghese. Remember that book?
Totally.
You know, the great Indian authors in America, Indian American authors, you know, they you know, their words are, this is fun. This is new from community, I would say. Now I'm going to get 47 librarians say, hey, come on, you didn't read such and such. But I really thought it was extraordinary and spectacular the way you did it.
Thank you. I mean, I hope it's new. I think it also.
It's new.
I love these traditions of immigrant stories from, you know, Zadie Smith and Philip Roth and people who were outsiders who then became the sort of core of American literature.
Pip?
Yes.
With our Pip. So Pip, for me, I mean, I felt a couple of things about yours, different from Stacey, and Sanjena's books, I felt the traditional classicism at work here. Those delicious, I call them rainy day books, where you just dive into a world, and I'm in a place that I have never been before, with characters that are so specific, in particular, interesting, surprising, and yet relatable. So where does your fantastical, like glitter you sprinkled on this great story come from?
Oh, thanks, Adriana. It's interesting because mine doesn't have any magic in it necessarily, other than the magic that a child might feel when they dive into a book. And so I did try to create. I'm so glad you said that, because I was really conscious of trying to create a world that once you start reading it, you could feel like you were really there. So the scriptorium is a magical place in and of itself, because it's a garden shed in Oxford, and it was where all of the words of the English language were stored. And there's something really magical about the meaning of everything being in a corrugated iron shed and written on slips of paper. It gives words a tangible feel. They become real, and so they take on personalities of their own, and that's really what the book is about. It follows, obviously it's got, very traditional novel storyline throughout, but the words, some of the words are characters as well, and just like the human characters, they have their own story arc in a way, and their own personalities. So I'm glad you felt there was a sprinkling of magic throughout.
Our librarians, they love, when they have their conventions, which I hope we'll get back to at some point. First of all, their librarians are the biggest party animals on the planet. They know how to party. And they also understand the world as readers. When I read these books, I am in the place, your setting so beautiful, and I guess I think that when Oxford is an enchanted place, to me it's like you feel the ghost when you're there. I half expected a ghost to pop up, but you really painted a world that felt to me what the experience is of being there. And librarians don't often get to travel extensively. And yet they know the world from the stories that you write, and they share those with readers. So it's almost as if, and I'll say this about your books too, that once they read them, these are shareable in their collections, because there's a thread of great female characters. And there's also seekers in each of these books. Wouldn't you say? Stacey, you've got seekers in this book that want to change the world they're in and the lives they're leading.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like that's right. There's so many great characters in fiction where we're really drawn, I think, to characters that want to change something about their lives, want to live in a slightly different way than the way they've been living.
Now, if you could just give us, I'd like you to speak directly to our beautiful librarians here, and of course we have men too. There's men and female and male librarians. And can you speak to the librarians and just tell them why you are so excited to visit libraries when COVID is over and share Olympus, Texas with the readers, with the American library readers?
I mean, I think it's, one of the most amazing things having your debut novel out is like, it's the first time you feel like you've created this world. And I worked for, more than 12 years on that book, a very long time. And it's just such a private thing, and that suddenly you're getting to share those characters you've lived with for so long with all these other people who are going to love them in the way that you love them. And that's so exciting. And libraries are that, especially I think for debut authors, are so important, right? Because no one knows you yet. They haven't already read your book. They don't want your next book. And it's the librarians that fall in love with books that then share those books with the patrons that come in. And, you know, our book culture would not exist without librarians.
That is beautifully said. Thank you, you're superstar. Got 3 superstars here. Sanjena, what do you want to say to the librarians?
Oh, I feel some of the same things that Stacey said. I think about this a lot when I teach creative writing, that there are sort of these rare sacred spaces where you can count on meeting people who love books and words and entering different worlds as much as you do. And I think those are like English and literature classrooms, they're libraries, they're independent bookstores. And so I am really excited to meet readers who want more books and maybe who were waiting for something, I hope, like this book, more stories of families, more stories of outsiders, more stories of a changing America, and maybe that, hopefully that mix of the familiar and strange that you were talking about.
The circus. Pip, how about you?
I think in Australia we have a similar public library system as you do in the United States. So librarians they're just integral to books being successful in so many ways. They get books into readers' hands, but they also provide the venue for you to meet readers. And my book's actually been out in Australia for a few months now, and so many of the events that I've done online have been in libraries, and it's extraordinary how many people are connected to libraries. So they're really community hubs, and librarians allow people who wouldn't ordinarily read your book to discover it. And I think that's one of the unique skills that a librarian has. They're professionals in what they do. It's different to sort of going on to Goodreads or scrolling the internet. You know, they can really think about who you are and offer books that you might not normally think to read. And I think it's a wonderful way and a wonderful relationship that writers can have with librarians.
It's so great. So we have three authors that love librarians, and I would like to just read a few of their comments out loud so that you can hear. You know, you're only going to be debut. It's like being a bride. It's like being a bride, except you don't have to worry about what the hors d'oeuvres. You just go out and share your brilliant minds and beautiful stories with people. It's better than being a bride. And you only get one debut, and I want you to savor every moment of it. But here's some thoughts from our librarians here. We got Frances Collado here, Sandra Woodbury. Karen Dirt is thanking everybody. She's loving it. Susan Detremont. Hope we could do this in person again. We do, too. Jennifer Child says so, too. Kim McGee, all excited about these debuts. Mariko Cato, good afternoon. Mariko, you're like my mother. You just come in with a greeting. No comment, just a greeting. No, we love you, Mariko. That's hysterical. Okay. Nancy Weiss. She said, I just read about these books. Looks great. Kim McGee says, we're jumping on this. Elizabeth Petrovic. Hello. Susan Detremont, your book sounds wonderful. I have a Texan friend. This is for you, Stace. I have a Texan friend who definitely subscribes to the Texas myth. This would be a warm-hearted gift to her. Is there any danger of her being offended? Let me answer that question. No. No. There's a tree. It's like big, bad, fabulous Texas. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I definitely, I love my home state with all of its, flaws and complexities. And I always wanted to write a book that honored that didn't, I am very Texan. So no, I don't think anyone who loves Texas will be offended by the Texasness. I do swear a bit. I just can't help it.
But, with COVID, I don't even know I'm cussing anymore. So I didn't think it was anything that, that anybody would be offended by. Valerie Dixon says, hi, when COVID-19 panic has subsided, are you willing to speak at one of the Fulton County Public Library or maybe a virtual event? I think on behalf of Stacey, and also, Sanjena, I would say, yes, we will all come to your libraries virtually, in person, however you want us. Let's see here. Kim McGee, she read Stephen King at a young age, too. There's no predate. Here's to predating YA. Hey, I'm older than all of you, and I thought there was a ton of YA when I was a kid. They recycled, like, Taffy's Tips to Teens, which was like hairstyles from the 50s. In the 70s, it was hilarious. In the 80s, the 80s, the hair came back. Tony Nako, did anyone have a big, old, awesome dollhouse in their library? Did anybody have a dollhouse? We didn't.
No.
That's on
Tony Nako had an extraordinary library. Well, we didn't have anything like that. Marlene Jacobson, I read the encyclopedia also. So you share that with Pip, a kindred spirit. Okay. Tessa Bartel said, I love this. This is like we're directly talking to our librarians. We love you. Oh, my, OMG. Oh, my goodness. Reading the encyclopedia, even in college when I felt my brain was just too exhausted to absorb whatever I was studying, I would just open a page of the encyclopedia at random and start reading. Jennifer Childs loves it. Beth Jarvis, yay, bookmobiles. Cheryl Zalazo, yay for us librarians. Michelle, thank you for supporting librarians. We love you, too. I got my library degree from UT, Austin, love, Texas. Kim says, we all want to party with you. Okay, you will. Monica just said, yeah, our librarians are right party animals. Yes, I went to ALA in Boston during the blizzard. And those girls could find their way to the bar. That's all I'm going to tell you. I never had a better night. Okay, what research did Pip do for her book?
A lot. So I don't know if you can see, I've got a dictionary here. This is A and B. Oh, weighs a ton. So this is a first edition Oxford English Dictionary. And this is the volume where Bondmaid is missing, and I can guarantee that it is. But I was lucky enough to travel to Oxford twice. On a research trip, and I had access to the Oxford University Press and the Oxford English Dictionary Archive. So I actually got to see and hold all those slips that I talk about in the book. So the slips that had the words and examples of how they'd been used in books. That's every word in the dictionary was on a slip of paper. I got to read the letters from the contributors and the editors. I got to see newspaper clippings from the Times. It was really fantastic. And of course, I also got to walk around Oxford and try to imagine what it would have been like to be Esme cycling around Oxford.
I feel at the end of this book is I felt very empowered by Esme, and I thought, I could do that. I could invent a dictionary. I mean, I really did. That's a great story that makes you feel everything is possible.
Yeah, and this is actually set also during the women's suffrage movement in the UK, was parallel to the making of the dictionary, actually, and also World War I. So big things happened at the time that the dictionary was being made. And it was important to me in many ways to make sure that Esme actually wasn't a hero. She was an every person. So you or I or any of us, anyone who reads it could be Esme. She has friends who are heroes, but she's not necessarily one of them.
Yeah, she isn't every woman, but she's also quite gifted
and unique, and we all are. So
we're all different and interesting. Monica McAfee says men are beautiful too. Okay, Monica, swipe left. I don't know how to help you. Joseph Donnelly, I'm teasing you. We know how to have fun. Yes, you do, Joe. Tony says yes. Does football figure prominently in Olympus?
Well, you know, I'm sure in the town itself it would, right? Like small Texas towns are all about their football teams. My novel takes place in June, so that's not football season, but there are characters that did play football in high school.
Beth Martin says, can't wait to get my hands on these books. I love that. Okay, Donna Rasmussen, because we're going to go out on Sanjena. You either, she says, as a librarian. A beautiful partnership and a wonderful afternoon with you. Can't wait to get to each of these books. Wow. My book clubbers are going to go wild over your books, and I can't wait to read them. So, Sanjena, we're going to go out on a librarian and a book club idea. What are you most excited about talking about your debut novel to book clubs?
Oh, man. I have a book club that I still belong to in San Francisco. We used to meet in the San Francisco Public Library, and one question my best friend, who's co-founded the book club with me, always asked was, how will this book change the way you live your life? And I think that's a massive ask for any book. It's the highest bar you can set, and so maybe a conversation will get us in that territory. That would be really cool.
I am in love with these three debut novelists. They are phenomenal. So let's go through them again. Don't forget our Stacey Swann, Olympus, Texas. Don't say it's just Gold Diggers, which means you're going to be farther up in the library and farther up in the bookstores. You'll know what I'm talking about when that time comes. Gold Diggers, Sanjena Sathian. And the Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams from Down Under. That would be Australia.
That would be it.
I want to thank everybody you ladies, I'm going to make sure you come on my Facebook Live, and we will promote you to every book club and library in the country and readers everywhere to hear about you. I'll be talking about you in the months to come, as will many of our other authors here. And we want to thank Penguin Random House for this incredible opportunity to bring, all the librarians to us today, and to have a really great dialogue about books and about these three debut authors. You're going to be hearing a lot from Stacey Swann, Pip Williams, and Sanjena Sathian.
Thank you so much, Adriana. That was so fun.
I'm so thrilled for you. I can't tell you. Get ready for a wonderful ride, and you're all deserving.